So, without further ado, Thomas Bloch.
Thank you very much. I will try to speak in a correct English because I'm French. So, and as you know, French people are not good at all for languages. Well, so that's a very strange instrument, kind of kebab. But you know what is a kebab, I think. I suppose you have the same here. And but rather than meat, here you have glasses. You have 37 glasses, cups, which are chromatically tuned. So you have 3 octaves. Actually, this instrument was invented by a very famous American guy that everybody knows here. He's not very, very famous in France, unfortunately, but you know Benjamin Franklin, of course. And he invented this instrument when he was in Europe, in London. He has heard someone who played on glasses, on normal glasses, put on a table, filled with more or less water to tune the glasses. I suppose that everybody has done this before in a restaurant or at home. And not only drinking. But anyway, he has seen this instrument who was called a seraphine. The seraphine was invented in 1743 by an Irish guy called Richard Puckridge. And he was very kind of strange guy because he also tried to invent a boat who was not supposed to sink, but he sank immediately. And also blood, how do you say, when you put the blood out of you and you put transfusion, yes, thanks. Then you are supposed to become younger, but of course it didn't work too. And he tried to be elected 4 times as a deputy and it didn't work out. And finally he died in the burn of his house. Anyway, he has invented the seraphim, and that's not so bad. A very famous composer, Christoph Willibald Gluck, played this instrument, and he toured in Europe in 1746, in playing some transcription of his own works. And glasses were known since the 15th century, but until Puckridge, they were used with mallets only as a percussion instruments. We have some drawings and paintings from the 17th century also who shows people playing glass instruments with mallets. Also a doctor in 1677 said that playing with glasses with different kind of liquid in it is very good for health. For example, one with water, one with oil, one with brandy, and another one with wine. And just in playing on them, it seems to be very good for health. Well, not only playing, but I suppose. But anyway, he wrote that in the book. It's a very serious study. And then, so Franklin has seen this instrument in a cabaret in 1761, and then he decided to improve the system because it was very huge. You can imagine 40 glasses on a table. You have to fill it every day. And when you play a long time, then the water goes out, so you have to pour again and tune it again, so it was not very comfortable. So he decided to ask a glass blower to blow each glass separately. And so you have 37 cups, as I said. And so it's quite easy to play. No, quite easy to touch, but then to play, that's another problem.
Thomas, before you go on, can you explain what you just were doing, washing your hands a bit?
Yes, it's a good idea. It's like a Judas. I have to wash my hands before to play with, and I use a very hard water. I have a problem with the United States. The water is too soft here, too purified, so my instrument doesn't work. That's why I asked the opera, and that was really a problem for them, to find hard water. and they had to buy water in Europe and import it. So it's very complicated with the custom. But now I have my water, and I also have chalk with me, grinded chalk, which is a problem for me at the custom because you can imagine how it looks like, grinded chalk. So anyway, then I mix the water with the chalk, and I wash my hands with a special soap, also very hard soap, and then until I can hear a kind of scratch on my fingers, and then I hope it's good then. And I have a third bowl here also with water, and then I wash the glass harmonica. I cross my fingers and try it. And it seems to work. That's a kind of ceremony I have to do each time. So, but during the opera you cannot see it. I do this, but in the pit, so you will not see it at all, unfortunately. But there are so many things to see on stage anyway. So that was a Largo, composed by Johann Abraham Peter Schulz. Peter Schulz died in 1800. There was about 400 works composed for the glass harmonica, including Lucia di Lammermoor, where the instrument is used in the mat scene. The most famous composers are Donizetti, but also Mozart, who wrote 2 works for this instrument, including his very last chamber music work, composed for the harmonica, with a flute, oboe, viola and cello. It's about 13 minutes long. And another piece which is a kind of encore for this quintet. Beethoven also has composed a work for this instrument, very short. Carl Philipp Emanuel Bach, it's his anniversary this year. Hasse and many other composers. So the repertoire is quite big. Also, not only Lucia, as the opera is concerned, but also Die Frau ohne Schatten by Richard Strauss used it. And even with all those elements, the instrument disappeared around 1835 because it was forbidden by the police. There was a few problems with this instrument. It happened, I think, 2 times. It was with a pregnant woman who came to the concert. The baby came a little bit earlier than planned. And also a problem with players. About 10 of them became mad in playing this instrument. That's why Donizetti used it in the mad scene. But not only, because when it was rediscovered, there is a composer who used it in the soundtrack of a movie. The name in French is Vol au-dessus d'un nid de coucou, the fly over a cuckoo's nest or something like that. Mm-hmm.
Thomas, before you go on, why did those 10 musicians go mad?
Oh, Well, I hope there is no more problem today. But as we know, it's at first they thought that it was a problem with higher frequencies, because when you play high sounds, it can be very... and of course, the name of the instrument, harmonica, comes from Italian, harmonica, overtones. So it's an instrument which is rich in overtones, in harmonics. And it was invented 60 years before the harmonica, the mouth harmonica that everybody knows. So the first harmonica in music history was this one. So about this problem of health, two problems. In the crystal, there is 24% of lead. And in the painting, there's much more than that. As you know, painting until the middle of the last century was very toxic, rich in lead. And in this time they used the black painting. So in touching this instrument every day during 15 or 20 years was a serious problem for them. Problem of lead poisoning, of course. So that's why it was forbidden. And Lucia was probably the last work in which the instrument was employed. Then it disappeared. And there was also a problem with the size of the concert hall. It became bigger and bigger, so it was very difficult to hear it. Today it's possible again thanks to microphones. But some composers and people like it very much. For example, Paganini named this instrument the Angelic Organ. But some others said, and especially a doctor at the beginning of 19th century said that this instrument is very dangerous. It can break your nerves in less than 1 hour. So in Lucia you can hear it during about 25 minutes only, so that's good for everybody. There is a little story about the premiere of Lucia, but before that I would like to play something else, because you are also here to listen to the sound of this instrument. I hope I'm not too long. No, it's good. I have time also for questions. And that's two pieces composed by someone who became mad, Carl Leopold Röhlich, and it's taken from a method how to learn to play the glass harmonica from the end of 18th century. Another problem with this instrument is waterproof. Okay, let's take care. Yes, a little story about the mad scene and Lucia's first performance in Italy. The guy who had to play the glass harmonica didn't want to play. So it was not premiered with the glass harmonica because he was not paid from a previous concert. seems to be always the same today in Italy. Nothing changes. So I had the opportunity to play the premiere myself with this instrument, the original part, at the beginning of 1990s, in La Scala in Milano. And so that was very emotional for me to do that. But I was paid, so that's good. I would like to play the complete works by Beethoven for glass harmonica. That's it. So you also have to know that Marie Antoinette, our famous queen, played the glass harmonica. Mesmer, also, you know Franz Anton Mesmer, very famous doctor. He was a friend of Mozart's family, and it's thanks to Mesmer that Mozart discovered this instrument. And of course you know Mesmer because you know mesmerized. So it comes from his name. And he used this instrument to mesmerize his patients. And he didn't give concert, but Mozart was fascinated by the sound of this instrument when he was 10, 11 years old. And he decided later at the end of his life to compose for this instrument because a niece of him played the glass harmonica. And Mesmer is also very famous because the premiere of the very first opera composed by Mozart, Bastien and Bastienne, was premiered in the garden of the villa of Mesmer. So then the instrument was forbidden by the police, as you know, and it was rediscovered during the 1980s by a German glass blower. So that's one of his instruments, Gerhard Finkenbeiner. And Gerhard Finkenbeiner was musically trained and also a glass blower. And he came to the United States in the 50s, no, in the 60s, end of 50s, beginning of 60s, in Waltham, near Boston, so because that's very close from the MIT. And he worked very, very closely with the MIT in scientific glasses. And as he was also a musician, and as he has seen an instrument kept in the Museum of Instruments in Paris, he decided to rebuild it in the 80s. So now we can play again the pieces composed for this instrument, Lucia, among others, because I have a copy of the original score I have found at La Scala in Milano of Lucia, and on it it's very interesting. You can see the glass harmonica part written, and it's just scratches very quickly because he had to compose something else for the premiere just a few hours before the premiere, and he replaced the glass harmonica by a flute part, which is normally classically played today, but as we have now the opportunity to use this instrument again, so we use it as often as possible. Sorry for flutists, but well. And I know that the flute player here is very, very good, so she's a woman, I think, so she must be very sad, but I'm very sorry about that. So,
Thomas,
yes.
Just a quick question. Are you controlling the speed of the spindle with your foot?
Oh yes. In the past, of course, there was no electricity, so the only way was to use it with the pedals, like a sewing machine. and it was very difficult to control. The speed is very important to control the intensity, the volume. When you play very soft, no problem, it turns quietly. But when you want to play forte, you have to push harder, but the problem is you stop it. So you have to increase the speed. And when you play the highest notes, it has to turn a little bit quicker. Otherwise, you cannot play the notes because the glass is very small and difficult to play, much more than the bigger notes, which are there, the lower part of the instrument.
We're deeply honored to have our conductor, music director, James Conlon, to join us as well.
Hi everybody, I'm delighted, and I know that Thomas told you a lot of great things. I mean, this is my first experience with this wonderful instrument. Last night, everybody was coming down around the pit looking at it as if it were a zoo, and they just seen a nice little animal that they had never seen before. It's fascinating, it's great, it has a wonderful sound. I'm sure you told them, I guess, the history of why Donizetti wrote it. He wrote for this instrument, and then, explain to me, the musician refused to play it because he hadn't been paid for the last concert that he had done in the theater in Naples. Happens from time to time. And so Donizetti rewrote it for the flute, and it's been basically the flute ever after until the last few years. Thomas played the first premiere in La Scala a few years ago. One of the reasons that we think Donizetti chose this instrument was that it was associated with madness. Probably you know this. Have you discussed this? Yeah. Anyway, he was because it had an association with people going crazy from touching it, from having lead in their system. He thought, I think, that it was a good thing to put into Lucia, who's at that point in the opera is basically a nice word would be what? Psychotic. She's completely disoriented. Now, mad scenes were very common around that time. They became a very popular form, mostly for sopranos. In fact, almost exclusively for sopranos. And there were musical reasons for that. And that was that by having somebody be disoriented or crazy, the composer could a lot of strictures, a lot of structures of form could be dispensed with, and the composer could write in a freer manner because there were not the conventional construction of the slow part of it or a fast part. He could go, as her mind goes from one thing to another, the composer can go to one thing to another. Now, so Donizetti, in fact, this is not the only, she is not the only mad scene of Donizetti. He had written, he wrote one before, maybe two, and he wrote one yet again. And there's an irony in this story. I think some of you might be familiar with an opera we did a few years ago, Eugene Onegin, which is based on Pushkin. And in the character of Lenski is shot to death in a duel by Eugene Onegin. In other words, that was, of course, Pushkin's creation. Pushkin himself was to die in a duel in his late 30s. This story has the same irony. He wrote these mad scenes, he took great interest in that, and he actually died mad. Donizetti had progressive insanity over the course of 10 years. And in other words, he was probably already beginning to get ill just after Lucia di Lammermoor, and spent his last years in that. There was a common malady at the time, like syphilis, and that he's not the only composer to have died that way, but he certainly is the most prominent Italian opera composer who died mad. So there's an irony in the mad scene and the presence of this wonderful instrument, which we're very happy to have, and we're very happy to have Thomas with us, who's come so far afield to be with us in Los Angeles. As you know, practically every year we give an opera which is coming from the bel canto, what's called the bel canto period. Bel canto period generally describes Italian opera of the first half of the 19th century. prominent names are Rossini, Donizetti, and Bellini. Bel canto means beautiful singing. So the prerequisite is that the singers have beautiful voices and that they are able to sing very well. There's a whole tradition of singing. You had to show that you could sing long, mellifluous lines, and you had to show that you could sing very fast and very high, so that this was like a virtuoso. And stories were constructed around a series of scenes, either solo scenes or duets or trios, to show off the voice, basically. So if you had an ugly voice, you shouldn't be singing bel canto. So it's a contradiction in terms. By the way, they didn't use the term bel canto. Bel canto became a term for that era after it was over in about 1850. But we use it as a general description. Donizetti, Bellini, Rossini, we do one once a year because they are really very, very, very important, basic to an opera house's repertory. Sometimes they get ignored for a long time, and so we decided a few years ago that we felt that it was important. People love Rossini, people love Donizetti. This opera was a success from its inception, and has practically never left the stage ever since 1835. It has always been popular. It has not just the mad scene, it has the sextet, which is practically a pop tune. It's played so much. So we're very happy to. This is our fourth year in a row that we've been able to produce one of these bel canto operas, and I think it's very important for the orchestra because there's a great discipline to playing bel canto operas. The orchestra seems like it's not important because it's in an accompaniment role. And because the singers have to be given maximum flexibility, but there's an art to it, and very few orchestras actually play bel canto operas well, and so I'm very demanding on them. It's like playing Haydn and Mozart. It is completely transparent. You can tell if it's good or bad. If it's good, nobody gives much credit to the orchestra. If it's bad, it's very clear that it's bad. So they are actually very difficult operas to execute, even though they are often comedies, like the Rossini comedies, and said, oh, that's light music. It's light music, but it's extremely difficult to play it and to produce it and to sing it. So it's a discipline that I think that I want everybody here to have within the opera, and that's why once a year, and I'm thrilled that it's Lucia di Lammermoor, and I'm thrilled that we've got the glass harmonica, and I'm thrilled that Thomas is here with us. That's my speech. And then, of course, if you have any questions, you're welcome to ask.
What kind of what specific challenges does it present to you? I mean, does it change how do you conduct an instrument?
1, 2, 3. For me. No, the only challenge is finding the right volume, because of course this has to be amplified in a large opera house, and finding the blend with the instruments, and that we're going to start this afternoon because Thomas is coming to the orchestra rehearsal, and we're going to do in about an hour, and that's how we're going to play.
And also, can you define articulate the difference between using this instrument and using the flute? So how does it change that overall section of the opera?
Well, this is a particular color that is unique, and it's foreign to the opera house as well. I mean, they're Frauen Schatten, right? I'm trying to think of who else uses it. It's unique, and I think because of its unique character, it is more interesting for us to. And after all, it was Donizetti's primary wish to have this done. So I chose in favor of doing it because of its uniqueness. And, that seemed to silence everybody. No more questions?
Glass harmonica effect.
Yes.